Hey guys, it's Audra. Welcome to another video. So today's video is all about the birth control pill. I've had a ton of questions about this topic, about the dangers, the side effects, long-term use, like all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have the time to go over other different types of contraceptive methods, like IUDs or patches or whatever. Maybe in future videos I'll do that, but today it's just about the birth control pill. So obviously the birth control pill is all about birth control. It's to help prevent unwanted pregnancies. Like, that's the main #1 purpose of taking the pill. However, a lot of people are put on the birth control pill to help regulate their hormones, like if you have really bad heavy periods. Also, if you have like really bad acne or something. Also, girls who don't get a normal period, maybe it's because you've struggled with restrictive tendencies with food, you've overexercised, a combination of both, like whatever, and your body just stopped menstruating. They'll put you on the pill. Or even if it took you longer to have your period, maybe you were like 16 years old and you go to the doctor and you're like, I don't have a period, and they're like, oh, well, we need to get you on the pill. Those are some of the most common reasons why people are put on birth control pills. In a perfect world, our periods should not be as crazy as we think that they are. It shouldn't be to where we're like doubled over and we're skipping work or school or whatever because we have so much pain. There shouldn't be a ton of like moodiness. There shouldn't be a ton of like back pain and all type of stuff like that. And when that happens, it's very obvious that there is a hormonal imbalance going on. Not only that, but there's a lot of, not just your hormones are imbalanced, but there's other things in your life that can be causing that, from your diet to your exercise to your stress, your sleep, everything. Which again, all of that has to do with your hormones. So if those things are not in a great harmony, then you're going to suffer some side effects as far as a hormonal standpoint is concerned. A big part of this is understanding how your menstruation cycle works. So the first thing is you have to understand the two big players in this that we're going to talk about is estrogen and progesterone. And these two hormones work in tandem throughout your menstrual cycle. So as your cycle goes, one will rise, one will lower, the other will rise, the other will lower. So they kind of go back and forth through the 28-day perfect cycle. Let's say you just have your period, okay? This is when your progesterone and your estrogen are at their very lowest. And for a lot of girls, this is when they feel very tired. Maybe you have a much lower sex drive. Maybe you're just like kind of like blah, like you don't feel great. After about a week, you'll notice that your libido starts to increase a little bit. You have a whole lot more energy. And what this is actually your estrogen is starting to rise. Otherwise, you'll notice that you have a lot more cervical mucus as well. This is usually for most women when they feel their best. So you're very energetic, you can focus really good, like you're just like on top of things, like everything is just firing on all cylinders. So biologically speaking, this is when your libido starts to really rise, because from a reproductive standpoint, it's your hormones are making you want to be sexually active so that you can produce a child. That's the whole point. And your body basically knows that ovulation is right around the corner. So during ovulation is when your sex drive is very high, and it's the best time for you to get pregnant. That's when your body is just ready, everything's ready to accept like the sperm so it can meet the egg, and then you can get pregnant. When you do ovulate, what you're going to experience is you might notice that you have a lot of like egg white type of cervical mucus. It's kind of like, it's kind of gross, but if you can imagine an egg white, or like it's kind of like spit, I guess. It's very like stretchy, it's very stringy. It's not like white or like clumpy or like creamy. I know it's so nasty, but it's like an egg white. Like, that's the best way to describe it. So you'll notice that you have a lot of that. You might even have like lower pain, like kind of like temporary like cramp period type of pain in like your lower abdomen region. You could also experience like acne or back pain. And if you want to get pregnant, this is the time to act. Like, this is the time to go for it. So ovulation can last up to a couple of days. It doesn't last very long. It's different for every woman. Sometimes it can last just a day, sometimes it can be 3 or 4. Soon after you ovulate, you'll notice that your body temperature and just like the way that you feel is a whole lot warmer. Like, maybe you feel kind of feverish. If you take your temperature, maybe it's like up in the 98s, 99s, and you're just like, man, I'm just like hot all the time. The reason for this is because your progesterone has skyrocketed. You might even feel like you're kind of bloated. You might feel kind of like, just kind of like gross, and maybe start noticing like some premenstrual type of symptoms, like you're irritable, you're tired, you're kind of achy feeling, maybe you have some mood swings. Finally, there's a huge drop in both progesterone and estrogen, and this causes you to have your period. You're gonna bleed, but you also might have some cramps, you might have some headaches, you know, just kind of feel tired overall. All of these symptoms and signs and everything depend on how your hormones are functioning. Some women have a very, very light period. It's 28 days on the dot. They know exactly when they when they ovulate. They know exactly like when they're about to menstruate. It's only going to last for a few days. There's not going to be any cramping, whatever. For the next woman, it could be very irregular periods, very heavy periods, very painful periods, like unbearable type of things. And so every woman is different, and all of that depends on your hormones. So when you have your period, a lot of girls kind of see this time and feel like kind of like this like euphoric feeling, like you're just kind of like, it's weird, like you just kind of like feel like happy, but then you're kind of like, this is weird, but you have maybe some more energy now. And basically what's happening is your body's getting ready to go back into the cycle again because you didn't get pregnant. If you had have gotten pregnant, you would not have had your period. Now that you know how the menstrual cycle works, I can talk about how the birth control pill intervenes with this and basically messes everything up. There's different types of birth control that you can take. There's some that totally like really thicken your cervical mucus so that when a sperm enters, it is not able to like attach to anything. It can't swim on anything. It's just like, it's like a roadblock type of thing. Prevent implantation. A lot of them prevent ovulation. Like they all do different things. But all in all, most of them, depending on what type of pill you're taking, are going to end up raising your estrogen levels. When it raises your estrogen levels, basically it's putting in a synthetic hormone into your body, which is obviously synthetic, is not real, so it's not natural, and it's making your body think that you are pregnant for however long you're on the pill. If you're on the pill for, you know, a year or 17 years, like when you're on the pill, your body basically thinks that you are pregnant. So what happens is basically when you're taking these synthetic hormones, it's your body, telling your body that, hey, we don't need to ovulate, there's no reason because we're basically pregnant. So it's not going to release an egg, it's not going to go through ovulation, like you're not going to go through a normal cycle. Most of these pills are, like there's some that you can take like for 3 months, or you know, like you'll bleed every 3 months, you'll bleed like once a year, you won't bleed at all, or you will bleed once a month. The once a month ones are the ones that I'm going to talk about mostly today because that's the most common. But these would be, you go and get your prescription, it's this little packet, maybe it's a circle, maybe it's a square, and it's got 28 pills. And the idea is you take one pill every single day, and that's going to equal your cycle. So the interesting thing about this is that only 21 of those pills are actually active, okay? They're called the active pills, and these are the ones that contain hormones. And then there's 7 pills that are non-active, and all these are sugar pills. They have nothing in them at all. They're basically just sugar pills. They're placebo pills. So you'll notice that when you get to day 22, that's the day that you would start your sugar pill. And then that's also the day that you would start your period. This is not a period though. Basically all it is it's a withdrawal bleed. So your body has been on these active pills for 21 days, and all of a sudden you stop and you take a sugar pill, and it's your body saying, okay, we're just gonna bleed. It is not the type of period where you're actually shedding your lining. It's not the type of period where your hormones are doing their own thing and working their way out and all that type of stuff. It is just a way of saying, hey, I think I got my period. Like, it's not a normal period though, and that is the biggest misconception with people. They'll say, oh yeah, I'm on the birth control pill, like I just had my period, whatever. Like, no, you didn't. You did not have a real period. It's totally different. All you did was have withdrawal bleeding. And a really interesting thing about this is when drug developers were making the birth control pill back in the 1950s, they had like this kind of like dilemma. They were like, well, do we just make all the pills active, or is it going to be too weird for women to, you know, go a whole month and not bleed? And so they're like, we might as well just put in these like placebo pills or these sugar pills, because it would be so unnatural for these women not to see that they're bleeding and having their period every month. So that's what they did. They put in the sugar pills so that every month you bleed and you think that you're having your period, but you are not having a normal biological period. It is just a withdrawal bleed. And there's a lot of other different type of contraceptive methods that you can take. Some pills, patches, like injections or whatever, can cause you not to bleed for 3 months, not to bleed for a full year. Like, it just goes and goes and goes. However, the bad thing about this is that the longer that you're on these pills, specifically the ones that are very high in estrogen, the higher that your body is going to have a concentrated level of estrogen in your body. So you're going to just continually build up estrogen the longer that you're on these type of pills. So when estrogen levels are high, meaning that they're not normally naturally balanced out with progesterone, you can really get into some serious side effects. Anything from, I'm just going to read some of these things because there's a lot. Migraines, increased risk of breast cancer, increased blood pressure, weight gain, breast tenderness, swelling, decreased sex drive, infertility, moodiness, increased risk of stroke, heart attack, blood clots, fluid retention, bone density loss, hair loss, and not to mention when your liver metabolizes the birth control pill, it actually causes a huge decrease in the way that you're able to absorb and utilize things like zinc, vitamin C, magnesium, other B complex vitamins. And so a lot of women who have been on the birth control pill for months or even years notice that they have a lot of nutritional deficiencies because your body isn't able to actually process these type of vitamins. Likewise, people who have been on the pill for a while notice that they have a lot of gut issues, and the reason why is because the pill can cause overgrowth of yeast and bacteria in your gut, and so what happens is it messes up your gut flora and your healthy bacteria, causing you to have some serious digestive issues while you're on the pill, specifically when you get off the pill. Big thing I want to point out too with this whole bone density thing is that there's been studies that showed that women who were on the pill versus those who weren't had lower bone density mass than the other ones, than the ones who weren't. And this is huge, specifically for girls who are getting on the pill and they're using it to regulate their cycle in the sense that they haven't ever had a period, or they skip their period because of over-exercise or not enough food or whatever. It's your normal natural period because of low calories or too much exercise, that's going to mess up your bone density to begin with. But if you go and couple that with being on the birth control pill, it's like a double whammy. So your bone density is probably awful. And I really encourage you guys to go get a DEXA bone scan. It's DEXA. You can go to like your local doctor or like family doctor, whatever, and ask them for a DEXA bone scan to see where you're at. A lot of girls are ending up with osteopenia or osteoporosis even in their like teens. And it's all because they're over-exercising, they're under-eating, they're on the birth control pill, like combination of all types of things, and they wonder, what's going on with me? You know, I would really encourage you to go get this, really no matter who you are, just to see where you're at, and you can start taking proactive measures to change this. And plus it's kind of like a motivation to say, all right, I got to get my life together, I got to stop this calorie restricting, I got to stop throwing up, I got to start eating more, and I got to stop exercising and get off the pill. So for a lot of girls, they'll notice that when they get off the pill that they experience what's called post-pill amenorrhea. And so this is when like you get off the pill and you notice like, I don't have my period back, like that's really weird. Well, again, you didn't have your period the whole time you were on the pill anyways, but what's happened is that the whole fluctuation of these hormones for months and months and years for however long you're on the pill has totally taken over the fact that your body doesn't know how to use its hormones anymore. So you might go through a time of not having your period. And a lot of doctors will just call this normal and natural and be like, oh, you know, give it a couple months, you'll be fine. And some women do come around after like 3 to 6 months and they get their period back, but then some women don't. And they're just like, it's been 2 years and I still don't have my period. Specifically, if you get off the pill and you're doing a lot of exercise, you're not eating a lot, you've changed your diet, you're really stressed, that type of thing. Long-term side effects of the pill, I'm gonna read some of these off. It is certain type of cancers like cervical cancer, breast cancer, ectopic pregnancies, gallstones, you know, on and on and on. And again, this is not to be taken lightly. You definitely want to reconsider why you're on the pill, what's the point of you being on the pill. You have to understand that every woman is different when it comes to hormones. Some might have very high estrogen, some might have low progesterone, some might have low estrogen and high progesterone. Some might be really low in each of those. And so there's no one size fits all approach to healing your hormones. Number one, you've got to figure out what's going on with your hormones. And a big part of that is not like, yes, you can go get blood tested and stuff, but a lot of girls will say, well, I went and got my blood tested and my hormones are great, but I don't have a period, you know, like everything's normal, whatever. Like, blood tests are not always accurate when it comes to hormones because your hormones fluctuate so much every single day, every single month. So the only way that you would really know what's going on with your hormones is if you literally went and did like a hormone test every single day to see what your levels were like. just by walking in and getting it one day randomly, that's not going to really tell you much. So this is why I really encourage you to figure out what's going on with you and look at your lifestyle, look at your past. There's tons of stuff that you can research and Google on this to figure out, like, are you more estrogen dominant, or do you have low estrogen, or are you just like depleted in both? Most of the people probably watching this video probably are depleted in both, or you're estrogen dominant. So if you're depleted in both, this would mean basically you're not having a period at all. And a lot of the people who are depleted in both are the ones who exercise a whole lot and they don't eat enough, or they've lowered their calories, they changed their diet, whatever, they're super stressed. Usually for you guys, the best thing that you can do is stop exercising, rest, and eat a ton of food. It's pretty simple. Those who are estrogen dominant would probably tend to be more of the ones of people who have been on the pill for a very long time. Maybe you notice that you carry all of your weight like in your legs, like in your lower body, like your upper body can just be super lean. No matter how much you diet or exercise, like you have very, very thick thighs, like a thick butt, thick hips, like whatever. And when I say that, I'm talking about like seriously, like you're not like a stick walking around saying, oh, I'm so fat. Like you really, that's where you carry all your fat. No matter what, you can't get rid of it. A couple of things that you can do is eat a raw carrot every single day, like a raw medium-sized carrot, not the baby carrots. It can't be juiced, it can't be chopped up. You need to just eat it and chew on it, whatever. There's been studies that have been done that show that actually really helps lower estrogen, even just like in the first few days of doing that. You can research that, it's very interesting. This is not for people who like are not getting your period and whatever. You don't need to be lowering your estrogen anymore. You need to be eating a ton of food to get your hormones back on track. So the whole idea of being estrogen dominant is the fact that since you've been on the birth control pill for so long, your body hasn't been ovulating, so you haven't been producing a lot of progesterone, and in turn you've just built up more and more and more estrogen. A big thing with being estrogen dominant is the fact that studies have shown that a lot of girls who start their periods earlier in life, so like as we're seeing now, it's very common for girls to start having their periods when they're like 7 or 8 years old, whereas like 40 or 50 years ago people didn't have their periods till they were like 16 or 17. And likewise, women aren't going into menopause until much later in life now, as opposed to like in their 40s or whatever. Like the China study talks about this too, but the women who menstruate earlier and go into menopause later, they are exposed to estrogen for a much longer time frame during their life. Like compared to rural Chinese women from the China study, Americans had a whole lot higher levels of estrogen, and they were exposed to it for a longer time length during their lifespan. So what that means is that you have a much higher increased risk for breast cancer, and that's why there was a huge correlation between low breast cancer in rural Chinese women versus American women. I'm sure you guys know a lot of your friends, or maybe even yourself, maybe you went through like menstruation, like your first period when you were like 8 or 9 or even younger. Like I can remember as a kid, some of my friends like started having their periods when they were like 8 years old, and we would always joke, and one of their moms told them something about like getting their period because they ate a lot of like chicken nuggets that had hormones in them, and I always remember thinking like, what does that mean? But it makes sense. I mean, and this is a huge thing too, is that animal products, not only do they also carry with them a lot of hormones like estrogen that can build up in your system, but they also are higher in fat. And so the China study showed that women who ate higher fat diets, specifically from animal fat, were more apt to have earlier menstruation and later menopause. Whereas the women who subsisted mostly on a plant-based diet had lower levels of estrogen throughout their whole lifespan. And this is a huge thing too for menopause, because a lot of people, when they go through menopause, it's just like the worst thing ever. And the reason why is because most Americans have such high levels of estrogen that when you go through menopause, it's like this sudden drop, and it has a long way to drop. Whereas like the rural Chinese women from the China study, they also went through menopause, but it wasn't as severe. Their estrogen wasn't as high, so that had a much shorter like span to drop in. So they didn't experience the awful side effects that we do from a menopause standpoint. If you do have estrogen dominance, like really high estrogen levels, I really encourage you to do the carrot thing and to switch to a plant-based diet as best as you can. Cut out as many animal products as you can, meat, dairy, eggs, like whatever, and really focus too on a lot of whole grains and beans and legumes, because these have high levels of magnesium and B6 vitamins, which are huge in PMS and menopause. So the last thing I'll say about the birth control pill is there is a strong correlation between birth control and psychiatric issues, specifically like if you are very prone to being depressed, having like anxiety issues, mood swings, you know, any type of disorder like that. These can exacerbate them because, again, it's a hormonal thing. Your hormones are going crazy, like it can make you do crazy things. I remember when I was on the birth control pill, I was literally a nutcase. Like, I was crazy. And as soon as I got off, I noticed that things started regulating again and I was like a normal person. If you notice that, like, I would highly recommend you get off. Part of this is that it can really lower your sex drive. The reason why is because you're not ovulating, and as I said earlier, ovulation is a huge like precursor to getting you ready to reproduce. So it's like your body is kicking in and saying, all right, we want to have sex so we can have a baby. Like, that's the whole point. So if you're not ovulating, then you don't have a sex drive, and when you get off the pill, you'll even notice, I don't really have a sex drive now either, because your normal hormones have not been able to work. And this is causing a lot of problems for people in their marriages and stuff, because there's no sex going on and nobody is like, there's nothing happening, and that's a big issue. A lot of women get on birth control to, you know, maybe as soon as you get married you get on it and you don't want to have kids for a few years or whatever, but then you find out it's not really that big of a blessing. It's actually a curse, because now you don't even want to have sex. There are a ton of other options that you can pick from as far as a birth control standpoint. Obviously the number one is abstinence, just don't have sex. Number two is there are two types of vegan condoms that I know about. There's one called Sir Richard's and Glide. They're both vegan options. They're like all natural, whatever. There's a whole thing called Lady Comp, and then fertility awareness, where you like chart your temperatures and you kind of go through like on a month-to-month basis, see how your levels are rising and falling, and it's an all natural type of birth control method. Those are really good, but I will say for that you need to know, like, you would want to be kind of having like a natural normal period at that point. Like, you don't want to just quit the pill and start trying to do this natural fertility thing, or you're probably going to end up pregnant. This is usually for women who have like a pretty normal period. If you do get pregnant and you're just not in a place in your life right now where you can care for a child, maybe you're really young, maybe like whatever the situation is, you can always like put your child up for adoption, because there are millions of families out there waiting for children. An unplanned pregnancy is not always a bad thing. It can be a huge blessing for another family, and even for you in the long run. Like for me and my husband, like personally, we're wanting to adopt right now. So like there's hundreds and thousands of other families out there who maybe they can't have children, or they want to have more children, or they just want to be a home for a child. You can place your child up for adoption, and that would totally bless that family in that way, more so than you can ever imagine. So don't look at it as it's the end of the world, like if you end up getting pregnant. Last thing I'll say is if you are vegan, most birth control pills are not vegan. They're tested on animals, and a lot of them have lactose in them. So if you're really strong on the whole vegan thing, like the vegan lifestyle and everything, there you go. You know, I know for me personally, I got off birth control pills, number one, because it made me crazy. Number two, the side effects were just awful. Number three, I personally just didn't feel right taking a pill knowing that I was kind of like playing God with my own life. And this is a personal conviction for me. Like, I just was like, why am I trying to stop a natural thing from happening? Like, you know, I'm like taking this pill, it's just not even really natural, you know, like if God's gonna give me children, He will in His timing. You know, that's why I got off. Other women get off for hundreds and thousands of different reasons, but that was for me personally. Hope you guys have a great day, and if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you guys next time.